wear off like a herd of turtles. Um, I For everybody tuning in, Burning Daylight listeners, I've got a fella named Bill Plouffe here. I'm
Plouffe,
guessing that's how
Plouffe, Plouffe,
Plouffe.
Plouffe,
Okay.
Plouffe. Yeah, just kind of Plouffe. I'm gone. So,
Bill, I like that. Bill Plouffe. Um, and Bill messaged me here the other day, and he was saying he was a friend of Dan Hartman's, and he listened to the podcast and wondered what it took to get on, and I told him not much because I'll argue with a post, but I'll talk to anybody, and we got to messaging back and forth, and he told me a little bit about what he's got going on, and I was like, man, I want to talk to this guy, and also like you said you're a pig farming cowboy preacher.
I'm the punchy pig farming preacher.
There we go, and I didn't want to offend you, but like, and then we got to talking. You know, we both been around cowboys plenty enough, and you're the guy that we all try to live up to. You know, like we're just like, hey, well, be more like Bill, okay? Don't be an asshole. Be like Bill, all right? and so but anyway, it was one of those. I just like talking to people, and I don't know where this conversation is gonna go, and I really don't care. I look forward to visiting with you. So, um, yeah, you guys just sit back and enjoy the ride.
Well, I'm going to start out there with you. I was thinking about, you said you spent time over there in Big Sandy on the IX, and
Yes, sir.
I grew up on the High Line of Malta there, and you were talking to Greeley Schumann. You said you figured out why all them people fight up there is because they're so cold and they're mad and they just punch each other because of it.
Mm.
And I'm having grown up on the High Line and having before my time with Christ been quite a pugilist. I think you're right. And now the only thing we had besides cold weather in Malta, Montana, right next to it is Saco, Montana, and it's the mosquito capital of the world. So we had really cold winters and mosquitoes all summer long.
Mm.
So yeah, we're pretty rangy, I guess might be the word to
Yeah.
use. And so when you were talking about, that's why we fought, I think you hit the nail right on the head, Matt. You're
just
right. So
fighting mad all the time,
yeah, well,
all
I
the
think
time.
it's probably half of it's just to keep warm in the winter. I mean, I remember I grew up south of Malta part of my life, and we grew up part of my younger years, we were out on my mom's side of the family's homestead. Her great grandpa and his brothers homesteaded it in 1908. And what's kind of interesting is we still have the wagon they homesteaded with. And
Oh,
so,
that's awesome.
yeah, I'm actually, my dad passed away and I'm going to get all of his wagons and stuff. And so that one will be coming down here to my place and stuff now. But anyway, and and I remember getting snowed in out there for 2 weeks at a time and just cold as can be. And the power would go out and we'd be melting snow on the stove just to get water for dishes
Oof.
and cooking and stuff. And then the second part of my, we moved to what would have been my dad's family's place then when we got into about my latter part of grade school. We moved there and it was a mud farm, so there was a lot of irrigating there and the mosquitoes and stuff. And so there again, the hard winters are definitely something that I'm used to, but I don't like them anymore. Moving south of the Missouri River to Lewistown, it's funny because usually it's 20 degrees colder up there at Malta, and it's getting to be a better place to visit than to live.
Yeah, you know, I feel the same way about Southeast Colorado now too. Like I live here in this little valley in Nevada, and it's kind of a banana belt. Like it gets hot enough in the summer. Like it'll get over 100 degrees, but not for very long and not for very many days at a time. And then it'll get down close to zero. But I don't know if I've been here 5 years now, and I don't know if it's ever been below zero. So like it's not that cold. I mean it'll get cold enough to be irritating, but like not real. It's not Montana cold. It's not even close to Montana cold. And so like I get a little bit spoiled, and then I'll look at the weather app on my phone and see my hometown, and it's because it's very similar climate to Southeast Colorado, except without the highs and the lows. Like you can knock about 10 degrees off the high and about 30 degrees up from the low, uh, as compared to back home is where I got now. So it's a real type of banana belt. And so when it's like 10, 15 degrees here, and pretty cold, and then we're also on the river, so you get the moisture and it makes it a little colder. And I'm feeling a little miserable. I'll look up back home and it's 15 degrees with a 60-mile-an-hour wind and the wind chill of minus 30. And it's like,
Yeah.
yo, this is better. This is better.
Well, yeah, I can totally relate to that because right here in Lewistown, we got 5 small mountain ranges around us. They call it the snow hole because we do generally get more snow than up at home. But it's funny, we're 130 miles south of where I grew up, and you're right. It's about that same kind of thing. It's about 20 degrees warmer in the winter and about 10, 15 degrees cooler in the summer. And we'll hit a few days. It might knock on 95, maybe 100, but it knocks there, but the door doesn't open. And up there
Yeah.
at Malta, man, I'll tell you what, in the summer, oh my goodness, it was just rough. But the challenge we have is, and I'm probably going more towards, I know like my wife struggles with a garden's a little harder to grow here though, because we don't
Mm,
get some of that warmer weather. I
yeah.
heard my dad was a bit of a gardener, so she'd sit and look at him, and my dad would literally grow potatoes that would really feed my family of 4, one potato, and she's
Yeah.
struggling to get potatoes. But yet on the other hand, most our grasses and our crops that are around here are obviously over time have adapted to the climate we're in. And so, but yeah, like I say, I still struggle a little bit. The mentality here is a little different than the Eastern Montana mentality. But on the flip side of that, the weather, climate, and my family living here, yeah, I kind of like living here a lot more than I used to. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
So,
Well, tell me a little bit about that Eastern Montana mentality, because that's where the old timers went, was Eastern Montana. Like they kind of went up in the Missouri breaks and whatnot, but they, for the most part, that those first couple of drives were there on the plains because that's what they knew.
yeah, it's interesting because as I messaged you, I spent about 6 different summers out on Two Crow, which is in right on the Missouri. Well, actually, Crooked Creek runs through it, and it runs a little bit over into the Missouri River. But I believe it's called Lodgepole Creek, and
Mm-hmm.
it's right there, kind of where the Muscle Shell runs into the Missouri, and that was actually the final trailhead of most of the drives that came up from down south, or a lot of them for this area, and then they disperse them out from that area and stuff. But it's just like for me, um, even my vet the other day when we was talking, I says, I know there's not a lot of people that are like me, and he's like, yeah, there isn't, Bill. I kind of figure if I ain't living out on the edge, I'm taking up too much room. But
Yeah.
it's the Eastern. I guess to kind of think about growing up, I kind of grew up in an area that, like with the smaller farm ranch, we had both farming and ranching, and, we neighbored, you kind of seen what the neighbors did, and, the rope and drag, and, the cowboy. And then, and I just thinking back as I was thinking about this podcast and my life and just trying to share, some stories and kind of what's shaped me. And, I remember dad riding horses and riding colts and stuff, but I don't remember seeing him start them, So, and why that is possibly because I was at school, or, just the different
Yeah.
things. He probably fitted in the cracks of life and stuff. But,
Well, and you're
and I
young. You're
guess,
not. You're not even paying attention to that.
yeah, exactly. And, but I just remember, being around horses, and I about my whole life remembered dad having a team of horses of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it might have been 2 saddle horses he threw together. He finally got to the point where he was driving the black percherons, because that's he remembered his dad farming with the black percherons, and so he had black percherons, up to the end here and stuff. But just the Eastern Montana mentality to me is kind of, you hit that Central Montana, and it probably determines kind of how we do things, if you will. And I know you had Marshall on here the other day, and he was saying he was leaning a little bit more buckaroo. We might have to go out there and string him up and stretch him out and help him get back to the. No,
Yeah.
I just tell people.
Get his head right, as they say in Texas.
I tell people. Yeah, I tell people I ain't a puncher and I ain't a buckaroo. I'm just a bunch of roo, So it's just kind of, and that's the thing is I think a lot of it's just evolved over time of everything. But it's I just remember guys that are a little older than me, 10-ish years older than me. You kind of looked up to them and you're like, man, them guys were cowboys. But, I don't ever, like as a kid, an outfit in southern Phillips County that had 500 to 700 head of cows, you thought that was a big outfit. That's just kind of what, that was big, kind of moving my wings out a little bit. And I really never cowboyed much out of Montana, but you start finding out, there's bigger places out there and stuff. And I have one friend of mine.
That's how it was for me in Southeast Colorado. It's like, you find somebody that had 500-600 head, and then they're like the big outfits had 1,000, 1,500, and you're just like, wow, that's a lot of cows. And then I went to go work at a feedlot, and when you'd receive 5,000 head in a night, you're just like, that's a lot of cows. And then, but then I was when I was at Cactus, we had some anywhere between 5,000 and 7,000 head of mama cows when we were trying to do that confined cow calf deal, and that was a lot. That was a lot, and. But then you look at some of these outfits here in Nevada, and it's 5,000 to 7,000 head of cows, but you're talking a couple million acres, and and it's not all put together. I mean, there's big chunks, but there's still there's a fellow that come to work with us here the other day, and he was talking about from his camp to headquarters was 60 miles. And you're like, hey, that's a big damn ranch. that's a big ranch.
Yeah. Being out on Two Crow, I think it was right knocking on 50,000 acres. And that's a big. And really the reality is anywhere that's a big place. But in Montana, that's knocking on the bigger size of there's, like I say, bigger places out there. And it was prominently a yearling outfit, I went to college for about a quarter, and I ran out of money, and I went to work for some people in South Phillips County, and they were a cow calf operation with yearlings, and they were running on the north side of the Missouri, down in the Missouri Breaks, and some onto that CMR game range, and that's, I think, where I got my love for yearlings. I don't know. Some days I'm like, I ain't a cow calf guy. I almost hate calving, to be honest with you. It's just I like, and I don't hate it, but I don't like, I just, he ran yearlings, and I'll tell you what, you start figuring out what a yearling is. And like I say, being wired that way, it was just kind of fun running yearlings down and roping and doctoring and stuff.
It is, it's the sure enough cowboy thing. Like if you just never grow out of roping, yearlings is your gig. That is your gig.
Yeah. And then, I landed on that Two Crow there. I can't even remember the first summer, and I was out there about 3 summers, and then I went out there two summers and managed it, and then I went and helped them get started last year. Changed the guy leasing it changed, and they asked me to come help them get started. But yeah, you talk about, it's just like, sometimes you just have to rope a yearling because the ear tag was crooked. You just gotta straighten.
You're telling me I'm the same way with Holsteins. That one. She looks a little more inbred than the next, so I'm gonna rope her because of it.
Yeah, and so you kind of start getting a taste of that. You're kind of like, Dad, I appreciate it. Just never really saw it, And anyway, so yeah, you kind of get that taste of that yearling deal, and you're kind of like, this is kind of it here and stuff. But the hard part is it was just a summer gig. And so I was leaving my family back here in Lewistown, and I was going 75, 80 miles away. And,
Mm.
as soon as you leave home, something's going to go
Oh,
awry,
every time, every time.
and the poor wife and kids. And she was actually, the one summer she was pregnant while I was gone, and
Oh,
relationally, I'll admit it probably wasn't the wisest choice I've ever
well,
made.
let me tell you, when I moved out here, so my son was born on January 11th, 2017, and I moved out to Nevada on March 20th, 2017, and my wife and my newborn son and my 2-year-old daughter stayed behind with on the property we had just bought 3 months before. And just like if that ain't a cowboy story, I don't know what is. you
Right.
know
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
um
Yeah. Go ahead.
so I was so we were talking about how Montana is just like a different type of people up there, and I feel the same way. Like Australia, they have a different. It was a penal colony for a reason. And and then there's like the people that just stayed on the high plains, and you and like I coming from the high plains, I look back at it now, having escaped, and I'm just like, why would you? And but I also think about the different styles of cowboying, and so and I haven't decided if I want to do like a comedy bit or a cowboy poem, or a little bit of both. But I've got a bit that I'm working on. It's like the different styles of horsemanship are akin to the different styles of liquor, where like the buckaroo descends from the vaquero, and the vaqueros are originally Spanish, so they drink the wine and they like the fancy, artistic part of it, and that's where the buckaroo came from, because they came from Mexico and then California, but originally from Spain. And then you got like Kentucky, like they want to be blue bloods, but there's still a bunch of rednecks here in the middle of the middle part of America. But
Right.
they kind of like to act like they're so they don't have the Scotch like the Scotsmans do, but they got bourbon, which is kind of close, but it still doesn't have like the same prestige as Scotch. And then there's a place like Montana, where if you moved to Montana and you ordered ordered a shot of whiskey, it might be turpentine, but you drank it anyways because that's what you had. And that's what I feel about Montana Cowboys. Like that horse might be part kangaroo, but that's what you have. So you throw your rig on him and step on anyways, because what else are you gonna do? You can
Um,
get on him and try to ride him, or you can just lay there and die, I guess.
yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're hitting it right there. Actually, it's interesting because there ended up to be quite a few sorrels and bays, and there's still a lot of sorrels and bays running around this country. And they say that historically, the reason there were so many sorrels and bays that ended up in Montana was because the number of outlaws that ended up in here, and they'd
Yep.
ride them sorrels and bays so that they weren't as distinguished as if they were
Mm-hmm.
riding something that had some color to it. So yeah, it's you say that it's interesting because yeah, there are definitely a lot of outlaw blood up in this country. Just north of here where I grew up there in the Little Rockies. It's kind of a little bit legendary with Kid Curry. He was an outlaw, but Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid ended up in that country some with Kid Curry and stuff, and a little bit of my family history on my dad's side. Sometime I've wondered where my wild streak came, and I actually got a cousin he's about, I think, 10. He might be closer to 20 years younger than me. And I always said it was a good thing he's younger than me and we didn't grow up together, because he's kind of got that same wild streak as I do. He's
Yeah.
fought bulls and a lot of the same things as I have. He's growing up now because he's got a wife and kids. But anyway, my great grandpa, or excuse me, my grandpa on my dad's side, he actually bootlegged whiskey for Al Capone for a while there. And
Oh, no
I
kidding.
got, yeah, yeah,
That's
and
awesome.
it's kind of funny because I was working in the feed store there right out of college there in Malta, and this old boy comes in there, and he was just kind of trying to pull one over on me and be about half miserable. And he looked at me and he said, "Did you know your Grandpa Louie bootlegged whiskey for Al Capone?" And I did, and I looked right at him and I says, "Well, he had to do something to feed them 11 kids, didn't he?"
Yeah, yeah. You had 11 kids in Montana, hoping one would live.
The thing is all of their kids lived, Grandpa Louie and Grandma Mabel. But I don't know. I really like my family history on both sides, and just kind of knowing where I came from and what. But it was said my Grandpa Louie and Grandma Mabel had a little restaurant there on Main Street in Malta, and like I say, he didn't have all 11 kids when he was bootlegging whiskey, but you had to, somebody pokes a jab at me, I'll push back, kind of a deal. But anyway, so it was told we was at it was at Thanksgiving. It was always the Plouffe family's biggest holiday, and we all sitting there one time, and the story comes up, but they had 3 kids crawling around on diapers in the upstairs apartment above this restaurant that Grandpa Louie was running down below. And the day that there was gunfire that came up through the floor of the apartment, I guess Grandma Mabel said it was time to go find a different place to live. So,
That's awesome.
So
Well,
and so then to jump a little bit further back, just a little bit of where my history is, and maybe
I was
part
gonna
of the
say, like,
reason-
let's take it back to the beginning. Where'd you come from? Where's your family originate, and
well,
and all of that?
So I mean, we're on my dad's side, we're of French descent. Grandpa Xavier, he come down out of Canada, and if I'm trying to remember the history right, he was in Malta for a while. Then he went over to Frenchtown, which is over by Missoula, Montana, and that's why they called it Frenchtown, was because it was a French settlement. And then he came back to Malta. And the interesting thing is,
before you go on too far, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Did all the brave men of France move to Canada?
I couldn't tell you because they must, because I don't know. There's a whole lot of them left in France, is there?
I don't think so. And like it used to be like I guess Napoleon was kind of like the last like legit like manly man French dude, even though he was a little tiny fella, but he still went out and did some shit. But like since then they've kind of been more of a like throw up the white flag, and I wonder it's just because they all ended up in Canada. And I don't know, because like those Frenchmen that settled Canada are like that those are some hard fellas.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean, it's Canada. Northern Montana is just an annex to Canada. So
southern Canada.
It's cold and rough. But yeah, so Grandpa Louie, he ran the stagecoach for Malta's assortment for a while there and stuff. And so the interesting thing is they just brought that stagecoach back to Malta. They sent it off to get it restored and stuff. And I wish I'd have knew, because it'd have been kind of fun to take my team up there to pull it and stuff. But they had another.
Oh, heck yeah. That'd have been awesome.
But it's there, but see, I didn't realize, it's kind of funny how you grow up and you get older and then you start realizing what your childhood really was. But that stagecoach actually sat out in the city park in the summer as kids, and so I played all over it when we'd go into town and stuff.
Yeah,
so that's pretty fun. So then my grandpa's side, my grandpa Plouffe side of the family came from Canada, and then my grandma Mabel's side, they came from Minnesota, and then some of Mom's descendants came from Minnesota, but then the ones that came up to homestead, they came up from Nevada, Missouri, and then they homesteaded south of Malta. And so my mom and dad were both born and raised in Phillips County, Malta, Montana area, and they've never lived out of Phillips County their whole life. They lived over at Dotson for a little while when Dad worked for a rancher over there, and then they went over back to Malta to take over the family farm and ranch after they were married, shortly after they were married and stuff. So yeah, that's like I say, Mom's still up there, and Dad passed away back in January. But anyway, so yeah, I'm just kind of rooted in Phillips County, and I'm still kind of connected because I'm just one county south now. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love hearing those stories like that. Those are just the best stories. You know, like the history books will tell us something or other, but like it's always best to find a period of history from a textbook that you think is interesting, and then go find something local, and then
Right.
hear some of those stories. Like that book, The Worst Hard Times, you know, about the Great Depression. That's right from where the area I grew up, and you're just
Okay.
like, and you hear some of the old men. They're just like, oh yeah, I knew that guy. You know, he was you know my dad's friend or whatever, and it just and then it makes history real.
Yeah, yeah, I agree because you know it's easy, like you say, you can go pick up a history book, and we know they're changing them left and right anymore. You know, as far as what's the textbooks and stuff. But yeah, when you start, like you say, the local history. You know, have you read that book We Pointed Them North by Teddy Blue Abbott?
Yes, sir, I have. I love that book.
Okay, so when they start talking about Drag Creek and Fort Muscle Shell and all of that, that was what
Yeah.
was fun to me because that's right where Two Crow is. That's right where that ranch is. And so, when you read that book and then all of a sudden you're riding down Drag Creek or, right where that mussel shell, it's underwater now
Mm.
because of the Fort Peck Dam and stuff. It's amazing how much more alive history becomes to you, and not just alive. I think it becomes important. You start realizing,
Mm.
just the hard men they were.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think we're dirty tough, and then you're going like, yeah, I've never just rolled out my bedroll and pulled over a buffalo skin over me and slept at night. I
Yeah.
made sure I was back at the house or the bunkhouse or in a tent.
That's exactly right. And you know they and you know in the cowboy world here lately, the Yellowstone and 1883 are you know hot topics, but like what regardless of what you think of how like they're reshaping Montana or whatever, but like if you go watch 1883, and I think they did a really good job of like tipping their hat to how it actually happened throughout history, and watching how those German settlers just dropped one by one by one. You're like that gives you a whole new respect or perspective of like just how soft we are. Even the hardest among us, like we're pretty damn soft.
Yeah, and I'm knocking on 50 now. At the end of this year, I'll be 50, and I'm starting to realize the more age I get on me, when it starts getting cold outside, the only thing I really care to feed is my wood stove. You start
That's right.
you start thinking, you know, I've, my teens and my 20s, I just sat out and gritted my teeth just to show what I can. Now I'm like, well, I've already proved that. I'll be okay sitting
I'm
here
the
by the
same way.
wood
It's like
stove.
I don't have to prove I'm cowboy anymore. Like I
Yeah,
did that
yeah,
already.
right. So yeah, so yeah, that's kind of my history. Grew up, like I said, right there in Malta, and I did normal. I don't know if normal high school kid is a good thing, but I was a normal high school kid, and did the small town USA thing. Was involved in 4-H and FFA, and just I've always just really had a love for agriculture as a
Mm-hmm.
general rule. My whole life is there was a little bit of time during my junior high year, when your brain quits you,
Mm-hmm.
they had to just cut your head off and set it on a
Oh,
refrigerator until you're about 25 and then give it back to you. But anyway,
isn't that about the time when all those kids decide they're transgender too? Isn't that right
yeah, it
about
might,
that?
yeah, it might be, but anyway, that might be a subject we don't necessarily want to discuss because
I was gonna say like
I,
because I remember if like when I was that whole span from like 12 to 18, and then even a little bit past 18, I was a moron, like just an absolute moron.
right. Oh, I know. I was there right with you. I always say that when I turned about 13, my parents were the dumbest people I'd ever met.
Uh
They were
huh.
just dumb. And I got
Yeah.
to about 25, and I don't know, they must have went to college for them years because man, when I hit 25, they got smarter. They all of a sudden got a whole lot
Yeah.
smarter. But Actually, what's interesting about that, the male human brain does not actually fully mature until they're 25 years
Mm,
old, and that's
yep.
about the time we start thinking a little different. So,
Well, and
but
that's also like I probably won't ever buy a horse from a fella that's under the age of 25 either. You know, like and
yeah,
unless it's a real good deal, and you know, I mean, like if it's a screaming deal, I'll take a flyer on it. But like if any horse that's supposedly broke at all, and the guy's 18, yeah, I'm sorry, buddy. Like it might be the best horse ever, but I ain't buying it. It's just not
right.
happening.
Right. Yeah. So out of high school, I did the American thing, or the thing you're supposed to. You're supposed to go to college, and which I
Mm-hmm.
don't regret. I did get a 2 year. It took me 4 years to get a 2 year degree. So
Heck yeah.
anyway,
Well, that just mean
and
you studied double hard.
yeah, that's well. Actually, I'd go for a while, and then I'd go back to school because I found out having a bunch of debt in college was not a real bright idea. But anyway, I got a degree in ag
I say
technology,
you're
and
smarter than me because I didn't figure that part out. I got the debt and the degree. So
well, I started getting it, and then I was like, and I ended up taking a bartending job and a night cabin job, and about everything miserable to add to the misery of college. Actually, I didn't mind college. College was a little more what I wanted to do. Now, high school, on the other hand, that was a whole nother
oh
story.
well,
I
and
could have.
bartending in Montana, like you're gonna get punched at some point.
Oh, I can. Yeah. How many stories you want? I actually, what's in. So what's interesting in this? This is in Havre, Montana, and like there again,
Yeah,
whiskey is sold.
I know Haver pretty well.
Yeah, and so
I got in a couple fights in Haver.
yeah, so I'm tending bar in at the bowling alley, and so but the thing is there was two reservations. There's the Rocky Boy Reservation and Fort Belknap Reservation on each
Yeah.
side of and so what I would get a lot of time is all the Indians that had been kicked out of every other bar would come to the bowling alley bar, and and then all of a sudden you'd get both reservations in there, and this is back when I used to really like to fight, to be honest with you. I always said if MMA, if I would have knew about MMA when I was a kid, I would have probably been in it. But
Yeah.
I organized a lot of my own MMA fights just because I liked fighting enough.
Yeah.
I would kind of, but anyway, so yeah, and so you'd call the cops. First thing you do is call the cops because I was hoping that if I did get beat up or half murdered, that they would show up to at least call 911 to get the ambulance there. But yeah, there was times I was throwing Indians out of the bar and everything else. And trust me, there were some white guys too, because white guys are just as dumb on alcohol
Oh
as
yeah.
Indians. So but I remember one time I was standing at the bar, and I had this little billy club. I called it Kryptonite because I figured you could take Superman out with it. And I went over there, and here's this guy. He's got this knife pulled on me, like at the bar, and
Yeah.
that billy club happened to be reached there, and I grabbed that knife and I spun his arm around. I come up with that, and I says, "Well, do you want to go for it or not?" And he walked out of the bar, so yeah, yeah, and so yeah, but then again, like I say, looking back on it, I didn't like tendon bar, but I like tendon bar, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The action. I probably like the action more than the sling and drinks. We'll just put it that way. So,
Well, that was kind
but
of before the days of a bouncer, wasn't it? Like the bouncer's kind of a newfangled thing.
yeah, I only remember one bar up there at Havre while I was going to college that actually had a bouncer at it, and otherwise, yeah, it was kind of, what, like I say, you'd think in a bowling alley it'd be quiet, I
Yeah.
mean, but no, we got some, it was, like I say, it was an experience that definitely shaped me and stuff. But yeah, so I went to college there and got a degree, and it was about right in that time frame, and it was 92. I kind of wanted to rodeo and fight bulls and stuff when I was in high school, but dad just would tell me no. And I don't know why, part of it probably just financially, it's an expense when you're young and
Yeah.
trucking up and down the road and stuff. But I decided that I wanted to rodeo and fight bulls along with all the other stuff I was doing. So yeah, I kind of took up the habit of stepping in front of the toros and stuff. So And I did that till I believe it was 2005. So there's about 12, 13 years of, mostly summers, little from about early spring to mid fall with, the high school rodeos on each end. And then I did a lot with kind of our semi pro association, the NRA up here in Montana, and some bull rides and stuff.
Well, what level of bulls were the worst to fight?
When I started with a couple of contractors that were the smaller contractors, and then I picked up for Donnie Jacobs Rodeo Company um, out of Great Falls, and I worked pretty much exclusive for him until pretty much when I decided it was time to go on to other things. And he'd went down and got a bunch of bulls out of the swamps down in Louisiana, I believe is where they came from.
Mm,
And I'll tell you what,
big old
and this was,
humpbacks, huh?
yeah, big old brindles, and I mean, I'll tell you what, and just trashy. I mean, just mean and trashy. And
Mm,
then there was one summer we ended up with all these bull riders. We were bucking 90 bulls a weekend at these rodeos, and these are
no kidding.
semi-pro rodeos, yeah. And so he went down to Arizona and picked up a bunch of nasty, stinking, just they weren't even bred bucking bulls as far as I could see. They were just a bunch of range bulls that were
Just
probably
tiger
three, 4 years.
Brayfords.
Oh, just they were, and just hadn't seen humans, and just they just
Yeah,
line you out, and just it just and honestly, a bull that's just kind of bucks off and doesn't really turn back are just terrible because they're already on the move. And so when they find you, man, I mean, they just I mean, you just and that was back in the days. They'd only hire one bullfighter, so you're doing
yeah.
90 head in a weekend by yourself, and you're just, oh my
Oof.
goodness, it just, and they actually, because I knew what my job was. Greater love has no man has this than he'll lay down his life for a friend. And I was like, my job is to protect that cowboy, whatever cost. And I'll tell you what, if somebody got hauled out of the arena on a stretcher, it bothered me. I mean, because
Yeah.
I criticized myself. I'm like, how did I fail? What did I do wrong? And so anyway, they all started nicknaming me Suicide Bill because they didn't think I was going to live past a couple of summers of doing this. But like I said, I just knew what my job was, and I took it serious, and I just, and a lot of good memories from it, and I mean, the reality is I didn't get busted up as bad as I probably should have. And, I mean, just, I mean, God's grace on me. And like I say, I mean, I'm sure some of my aches and pains and crippled up hands might have a little bit to do with it, but not exclusively. So,
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think those aches and pains, like even as much as a guy tries to take care of himself, like you when a horse falls on you, something breaks. It may not be a
yeah.
bone, but something breaks, and you're gonna feel it for a while.
Yeah, yeah, oh, absolutely. You're definitely right. And there again is, I when I out of college, then I come back to Malton. I worked at that feed store for a while, and then I got hired on up there at Fort Benton, right there next to Grove Country of Big Sandy there, and I was selling feed. And I enjoyed the feed business and what I did. I just couldn't quite get along with corporate America. I was a little too
Oh,
ind-
tell me about it.
independent, too much of an independent thinker. But that was about the time I started riding colts for the public. I've always just, like I said, I had that little phase there where I wanted to be a motorhead in junior high. But after that, it was kind of like I just want horses. I just, and so anyway, I started riding some colts for the public up there in the evenings and stuff. And I just remember in the fall it'd get dark early on you. And I remember long trotting these nasty. I mean, some of them were kind of trashy colts out in the CRP in the dark, And I'll tell you
Mm.
what, you out in that tall grass with pheasants and deer in the dark, you'll find out if you really want to ride colts or not.
Oh, I
Yeah, there was a
bet.
few, so, but yeah,
Yeah.
I was just, go ahead, excuse me.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just we got a little bit of a delay there, but yeah. Uh, no, I'm just agreeing with you. Like there's just something bad. Like something happens, and you just like you're on an animal that's even your best horse sometimes is just gonna freak out over something, and like you don't know when that's gonna happen. I like I really, after all of the people that I've had the privilege to speak through or speak with, either through this podcast or just who I've met, like the closest mindset I've ever come to with the cowboy is like like the special operator type military where they're kind of handy at about everything, and they're also probably not best suited for the gentle public. Like it's probably a good thing if they only come to town once a year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
No, no,
like
I know.
the good ones, anyways. The good ones on both sides. Like the real good cowboys probably shouldn't see people more than a couple times a year.
Yeah, I know. I like going out there to Tuco for the summer. I'd always think, I got to go back to civilization, but will civilization come back to me? There's
Yeah.
kind of need a transition period there.
Mm.
It's just kind of like yearlings are all shipped out, strays are all found. Well, time to go home, and you're just kind of you run renegade for 5-6 months a year without a whole lot of supervision, and then when a guy like me is the supervision, you're kind of going like, yeah, man, that's good, because I think you're right. You definitely, the good ones, because and that's I was sitting here thinking um, about this podcast, and just the cowboy and the cowboy way, and and that we're so iconic, and I don't know how to say it different than that. I heard at one time that the two most recognized things around the world was the American Cowboy and Coca-Cola. You go anywhere and people
Yeah.
know those things.
Yeah, well, and
And
then I would say Marlboro cigarettes as
right,
well, and they're almost one and the same with the American Cowboy. Like whether it's a cowboy smokes or not,
right.
like like we'd like to think that Copenhagen snuff would be synonymous with the cowboy, but around the world, no, it's Marlboros, the Marlboro Man, and yeah, like I just whatever it is, like people want to be us, but still, at the end of the day, there's not very damn many of us.
Yeah, and and that's the thing though, is you're right. They want to be us, and and I was thinking about because like I say, I've watched a lot of different videos of the different places and stuff. I believe you were talking about wanting to go down there to Florida and with the crackers and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, and just and I was sitting there thinking about that, and even what I would call the weekend cowboys, because in some ways, I'm getting a little more like that in life now, just because of just some changes and some decisions, we're making as far as
Mm.
trying to be more of a family man and getting some age on me and trying to think a little more long term. And not that I'm a weekend cowboy, but but I guess what my thought was is the reality is whether it's the weekend cowboy that still just wants to go be a cowboy, or us that are trying to do it every day of our life, because every day of my life I'm doing something with a horse, or
Mm.
and stuff. But I guess what I was thinking about is really the reality is we're all on that same journey together. It's just we're on a journey, and we're all looking for the same thing out of life in a lot of different ways. We're just doing it differently,
Yeah.
and and I haven't watched Yellowstone for many reasons, and part of it is I'm just stubborn, and if there's a fad out there, I'm going to be on the opposite end of it, just so that way I'm not part of the fad. But
I see.
but on the
The contrarian in me likes that, and also hates it at the same time. Because contrarian.
right. But I was thinking about and my wife watched a little bit of it, and she's just anyway, and we visited a little bit about it, and I had another guy telling me about it, and I've seen the propaganda is the right word, the advertisements and
Yeah.
stuff about it. But the one thing I was thinking about, because part of my wife and my desire now is just like I say, trying to be home and switching life a little bit, more, and quitting riding the rough string and trying to raise some gentler horses for my wife and kids and I and stuff. But the one thing is we're trying to look at what we call agritourism, and kind of
Mm.
having a day long, we're still evolving in what we're really wanting to do, but with the wagons and the horses and having the livestock here and stuff, I think the one thing that we can do as people that are rooted in agriculture is education, because
I think you're
Hollywood's
right.
Hollywood's educating people, but they're educating them wrong a lot of times. And I don't know how to
Yeah.
say it any different than that. I'm not wrapped up in popular culture. I don't watch much television. And so with that said, though, but what's out there is we get such a negative light at times, and
Mm.
yet, I'm sitting here thinking, I had a little struggle this winter because I had my rodeo cattle up on a little bench up here next to a high road that went by the subdividers, and I was constantly getting called into the brand inspector and the sheriff, and just anyway. But in that is all as I thought, how many of them people are just miseducated? How many of them
A
just
lot,
don't understand?
a lot.
And so I guess, and so what I guess, to think about this is, we're iconic. I mean, the reality is I was actually in the grocery store one time. I just got done riding a bunch of colts at the arena, and I'm standing there with my boots on and my hat, and little kid looks over and he pulls on his mom's coat and he's like, mom, look, a real cowboy. And so, this is kind of the image that, this is the image we have. And I think if we can start saying, how can we educate the American public on what we really do? I mean, do I go out and rope and choke down a yearling at times? Absolutely. Do I do it
Yeah,
every day? Well, I'd like to, but I don't.
yeah, same
We
here.
make the, we make them judgment calls, and we have to make the judgment calls that are best for the operation, best for the individual, and best for the
Yes, sir.
livestock. But the reality is we're sitting here making judgment calls that what we feel is best for the American public and around the world, because we're helping to feed the world. And so
Mm-hmm.
as I was thinking about that, I think whether it's the cracker down there in Florida, or the buckaroo out in Nevada, or us cowboys up in Montana, wherever, the reality is at the end of the day, the good ones that are out there, the ones that are going to last, the tried and true ones, are people that truly are stewards of the land and steward of the livestock.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. My very first episode that I did of this podcast, I did it horseback, and I had a pair of earbuds, and I didn't know what the hell I was going to talk about. I just knew I wanted to talk to cowboys because I'm not the best cowboy. Like I've never called myself a bronc stomper. I've called myself a bronc stayer honor because I can usually ride out enough jumps to get their head pulled around to the right and get them circling, and then I'm usually pretty good to go. And if I can make 6 jumps, I'm usually looking all right. After 6, it gets a little sketchy. Like I'm not a Montana stomper. Like I don't give them their head and just let them have at it. Like I'm not that good. I'll give them 4 or 5 jumps, and then I better get their head yanked around. And by jump number 6, like they better be circling because I'm in not a good spot. But like I love everything about it, and like I've worked with like open range cowboys. Work on a wagon, live out of teepee. I've worked with some guys that are like your ranch hand type cowboys that have been at the same mom and pop place running 600 head for 30 years. They've been on the same place. I know feedlot cowboys that have been in every damn feedlot in the country, and still somehow they managed to get a job. I don't know how. But I just like cowboys are a different breed. Um, but I like them. Like there's like of any, like I said, besides like those special operator guys, and like I'm not in the same category as them. They've seen some shit that I'll never see. But like that mindset where just like you don't have a quitting time. You quit when it's done. Like when the job is done, you quit. Or if there's no sense in working through the night, you just like, all right, this is good enough. But outside of that, like you quit when the job is done, and like if the weather sucks, well, guess what? So's your job. Get out there,
Right.
and it's just like there's no choice, and it's because he knows that. So either do it or get the hell out. That I just like those are your choices. and and there's like their good cowhands should be paid a lot more than what they're worth, but I for whatever reason we're not. But like like you cannot anybody can name like two or three guys where like if I needed to call somebody like for some real cowboy shit, I've got this guy and this guy in my phone, and I know like it might take them a couple hours to get there, but they'll be there, and you'll get it figured out. And I don't know, like there's it's it's a small community like that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think the whole thing is you start finding out the loyalty of people. Those that, like you say, those that are there till the end. They ain't gonna
Mm.
quit you, and stuff. And that's that second summer I managed to grow. I ended up a young man and his wife ended up out there with me, and they might have been 20, and you know, and him and I become such good friends, and always, how it is. Any friendship is going to go through some ups and downs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But we became such good friends because of just that. When you start bringing in 15, 1,800 head of yearlings in one wad, and we had other help and stuff. But you just you find out each other's characters in them moments, and we had this one old rip. We were gathering strays bailed into this reservoir, and we both got a rope on this dirty rip, and when it's on a side hill and it's in the fall and it's icy, half muddy, half wet, and so that's a time and a half
Montana
there,
special.
but yeah, but you find out them kind of guys right in them moments. They just don't quit you. And finally our horses were shot, so we went back to the house and thinking, well, she'll come out before we get back. Now she was still standing in the same stinking spot when we got there. But you just think about those moments like that, and you know, you look back on life. Yeah, sure. Are we ever paid as much as we should be? Probably not, but it's probably best we aren't because we'd self-destruct most
Well,
likely.
and like
And
we were talking before, like most good cowhands are not fit for polite society. So like you give a good cowhand a good chunk of money, and it usually ends real bad.
right, yeah. But you look back on the memories and the friendships that we make, and the stories. I mean, that's just like I say. I've actually been trained to speak in different things, and part of it was because my wife was going to conferences and I was going with her, and so I was trying to prepare and think things through and stuff. And at the end of the day, just some of the stories we have and some of the experiences we have, and the reality is if I would have stayed in the feed business out of college and they wouldn't have ran me off, if that's because they did fire me, they told me to go find something else to do. I went and drove cow truck for a couple of years, and then kind of, I was riding colts constantly. Everything I was doing, it seemed like I had a colt or two I was riding. I finally thought, you know what? I was even in a machine shop for a while, and I was supposed to be a 6 to 8 week job, and 2.5 years later, I was still in there. But every night I'd go home and ride colts. And I finally thought, you know what? What's the thing that you've always done well working somewhere else? Yeah, I was always riding colts. I always wanted to be on a horse or something with a horse. And I finally thought, you dummy, just go be a cowboy. It just,
Yeah.
but, but I was thinking about, just the different experiences I've had and some of the wrecks and the good times. But we were down there in South Phillips County. I'm hoping the law statute on this story has passed because,
Oh.
well, I could have probably done some. I don't know if I'd have got jail time over this, but we darn
Well,
sure would
see,
have.
all you got to do is end your story with allegedly, and this is a comedy show, so therefore statute of limitations is
Okay, so
probably
allegedly.
moot. I think
Okay,
maybe.
okay, so allegedly this happened in South Phillips County
There we go.
in the Larb Hills, but we'd moved a bunch of cows for this friend of mine, and so there's two, three of us sitting there at lunch, and we're sitting there looking at this little wad of elk, and well, they needed rope.
Well,
Allegedly,
yeah,
allegedly they
allegedly.
needed rope. And one was probably had foot rot and needed doctored or something. So
Yeah, I mean
we kind of
something was up.
yeah, we come up with this plan of what we're going to do, and so we talk about it. So we go out there and we met, and of course there was a handful of cows and a bull, and if you're going to rope something, you just as well go for the bull. No sense of
Yeah.
roping one of them cows.
Well,
And
you don't want
so
him
we,
fighting you later on, so you
well,
better
no,
have him.
no, no,
You better have him necked.
yeah. So we miss him. When I don't know, maybe we weren't as full of hearted as we thought we were. I don't know for sure. But I was on this paint thoroughbred cross mare I have. She's actually the mother to the team of horses I drive right now, and I actually still have her. But she did not like being behind anything. I mean, if like when you was trotting back to the house or something, if she was behind another horse, she was always charging to get in front of everything else.
Mm.
And so I'm sitting here. I thought, okay, I'm going to get around that bull and I'm going to bring him back to them other two guys. And so we're running neck and neck with each other. Just I'm right there looking at that bull in the eye, just neck and neck, like we're headed for the finish line at the Kentucky Derby. And I take my reins and I over and under that horse. And I could feel her just grabbing another gear. And she drops. And I mean, she's stretching for all she had, and she's starting to beat this bull. I'm thinking I'm going to get around it and I'm going to bring
Yeah.
him back to him. She stinking hangs up her right foot, and I tell you what, we slapped
Oh.
that ground so stinking hard. I mean,
Boo.
face planted me. We skid, blackened my eyes, skinned up my face, and so then
You know,
when you go
you
back
know
into the public,
I don't want to interrupt too much, but like isn't
no,
it funny how those movie people have got that effect like when you're falling to the
oh,
ground in a rapid pace, they've got that camera angle figured out. Cuz that's
yeah.
exactly what it looks like. It's just like a blur.
Yeah, yeah. So I skinned up my face. And you go back into the public, and of course everybody in the world's going to ask you
What'd you
what
do?
happened. Yeah, so but you sit there and that was, man, that was 20 some years ago that happened, and so you're still sitting here, and I just as you sit and you think about your life and the times you've had and the different things that we've done, yeah, the paycheck is good. I like to keep my bills paid and stuff, but at the end of the day, that memory nobody can take away from me. That story
No,
can be
you're
passed
absolutely
on,
right.
and I mean, you just stop and you think about all of that stuff, and the other thing and like I said, I'm working at being home more now as I'm getting a little older. I actually took a part-time job again at another feed store. I hopefully a little more mature now, and I won't fight with corporate America. No, they're good
Yeah.
people. It's a locally owned deal, and it's where I've done a lot of my feed business and stuff. But the thing I think about it is just a lot of it you can do with your family too. As your
Yeah.
kids are growing up, I look at I've got two older kids that are full grown from my first marriage, and I kind of ran through that and some poor choices of life. Imagine that, but I got remarried here maybe
Yeah.
14 years ago in May, and I got two younger kids, and it just like there's so many things I go do. Like well on Saturday, a matter of fact, I got a friend that's got a little sawmill here, and we burn firewood, and I asked him. I says, "Hey, you mind if I bring my team of horses, and my wagon, and my family over to cut a load of firewood and haul that home with the wagon?" And those kind of things to me are priceless.
Yeah.
Those are the things that my kids will remember. They're learning the work ethic. That even if they don't want a cowboy or farm and ranch for a living, they're going to go out into the public, and they're going to be the kind of kids that the public wants to work for them.
Yeah, it was really cool. Just yesterday, I was on the phone with Boots O'Neill, and then my wife and kids are up in Oregon right now on spring break, and I'm trying to, you know, I'm trying to bank a couple more days, work a couple days while they're on vacation, so later on this year I can have a couple extra days to take off, and it's kind of like a girls trip, like it's a girls trip plus my little boy, like so I've got my wife, my and her sister, my little girl, my two nieces, and then my little boy. But he's young enough where he's not gonna come work with me at the feedlot every day. So he's the only man on the girls trip. So but I kind of like to leave that as a girls trip. But I was talking to Boots O'Neill, who's one of the most legendary cow punchers there is, and he's asking about my kids and how they're doing. And now I get to tell them like, hey, this is a man who's respected by the entire cowboy community, who is genuinely wants to know how you guys are doing, and like that's how small the freaking cowboy world is when it comes down to it, and it's something really really neat that I like. Not only is my dad kind of a legend among the kind of like the Colorado cowboy world, but also they got Boots O'Neill, who's like a legend, and it just like, man, that's it's so cool to be able to pass that on to them. Like they don't even know how cool that is, but like one day some cowpuncher will be or buckaroo will come up puffing his chest talking about who he knows, and and just like, yeah, but Boots O'Neill asked how I was, back in the day, and that like so it's really cool to be able to pass all that on down, and it's like that's most of the cowpunchers back in the day couldn't read or write, so you had to hear stories like that.
No, you're right. That's just it, and that's the thing you talk about Boots O'Neill. I mean, like you say, anybody that half worth their salt knows that name. And actually, he was up in Phillips County there. The 4-6s had ran a bunch of cows up there one year. They were droughted out and stuff. And so a bunch of the guys up there I grew up actually got to meet him and be around him and stuff and all. But, and I think, as you're saying that, it's like, not that I want my name to be known per se, that I don't, I don't need it to be that my name's in the lights or, things like that. But I think my thing is I stop and I'm like, and age does this to me more and more as I grow up here. I say I'm almost 50, so it's almost time to grow up now. But
Yeah.
I sit and I think, how can I be that person somebody looks up to? How can I be that person that, the young guy here in Lewistown, Montana can look at and say, I want to be like that guy. And it ain't always about ability. I think ability is a huge part of it. One thing I've and I'll see where this goes. I've got a desire, even if I'm just a little small, even though I only had 10 head, I have this desire to help, kind of like an intern, if you will, or help these young kids. There's so many things that I had to just go figure out on my own. And which is okay. I mean, I don't ever want to whine and cry about that, but sometimes you're sitting out there with this 800-pound yearling on the end of a line and you're like, I don't remember anyone teaching me what I'm supposed to do now, kind of a thing.
And like I can't let go of my rope to look at my phone to see what I'm supposed to do now. I can't look up a YouTube video because yeah, I got a 800-pound animal at the end of the line and I got to figure out what the hell to do, and sometimes that's gonna end badly, but you learn from it, like probably more often than not when you're first starting out, it's gonna end badly, but you don't learn any other way.
Yeah, and you're right, and yet also the other thing that I think, I mean, granted, I know 20. You're like we just said, from 13 to 25, they're knotheads. They don't want to listen half the time anyhow. But sometimes I get so frustrated, and I've done it. I won't sit here and say I'm faultless in this. We'll sit there and cuss some greenhorn because he doesn't know anything, and sometimes I have to stop and say, did anybody teach him? Have we given him the opportunity to learn that? And that's where I'm.
You're 100% right. I hear so many people talk about the millennials or the Gen Z generation and how terrible they are, but like somebody raised them and it wasn't me. So like why like probably a lot of it is on the Gen Z, the millennial generation, but not all of it because they had to learn it somewhere.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is here I'm like I say, I don't know, I get lost at which number and letter we're on as far as Z, X, or Y, but the 20 somethings, I look at my generation. I'm responsible for the outcome of my two older children.
Mm-hmm.
I can sit there and say, but and they've turned out well. I mean, they're not cowboying, but they both have got really good jobs and they're productive in society. And yet that's what I sit here and I think it's like, how can I, as an older gentleman that has some experience and has the bumps and bruises and the aches, take that young kid and I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not easy on them either. I work at the sale barn, and there was one night I let in the middle of a kid because he wanted to sit up on the rail and flap his mouth and not do what I told him to do, and I let in the middle of him and told him how disrespectful he is. But I think I look at it as like, how can I give those young men an opportunity to learn also? How can we help them? Because the reality is we're not all going to be a Boots O'Neill at 90 years old still trotting a circle.
Not
And
not at
so,
all. Like that's
you know,
that's a one of a kind. I think we've all figured that out. Like that just don't happen. And
you
the
know,
one time it did happen, it happened to Boots, and that's it.
right, right. And so, that's where, I kind of think about life right now, and where I'm at is, how can I take what I have and help that next generation out, and kind of where I'm at. And, like I said, I sold most of my cows about 3 weeks ago, just economics and just, I mean, I was all of a sudden going to owe money on cows I owned. And I thought that's a really, really bad decision, there,
Right.
and so, anyway, but I sit here, on kind of where my wife and I are, like I said, we're kind of looking at agritourism, along with, the pastor in the church like I do, and then also taking some time at the feed store. And my wife has a YouTube channel that she does with a lot of kind of, homestead type stuff. But I sit here and I
What's
think,
her
how can
channel,
I,
by the way?
it's,
Plug.
it's,
Go ahead and plug that. Go for it.
yeah, it's Delcy at a Life of Heritage on YouTube, and like I say, it's a lot of homestead stuff. She's more and more incorporating, our everyday life. And there's a video from last winter there that I almost despised round bales, because round bales involve equipment, and most of the time my equipment, if I need parts for it, I need to go to the museum to find it. So most of the time
Right.
my equipment
You
my
gotta
equipment don't run.
fabricate your own.
Yeah. And so I had this bright idea how I was going to move this round bale with my team of horses. I drove a piece of sucker rod through this round bale and hooked a toe strap to it, and hooked the toe strap to the double tree. And, everything was going semi well. It was kind of a colossal wreck all along, but I finally got it stretched out, and I, I got it. I got the bale rolling, and it was going downhill, and that bale just nearly ran me over. I mean, it was everything I could do to not get ran over by that bale run. A
Oh
few
man.
miscalculations there and stuff. But yeah, so
Are you sure you're not from Arkansas instead of Montana? Because I mean, if that's not a hillbilly story, I've never heard one.
well, my mom's side of the family come out of Missouri, so that's knocking
Oh,
on the
fair
door
enough.
of
All right,
Arkansas. So
close
yeah,
enough. Oh, that's
right.
awesome.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, it's
awesome.
like I say, we're and so kind of where I'm at now is because like I say, I've just I want to raise food. I mean, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
I want to raise food, and I want to be home with my family. And so, hey, we're kind of unique. We kind of look at a lot of the older breeds of stuff, heritage type stuff. And
Hmm.
when I say I'm a Punchy pig farming preacher, actually, when I was a kid, I finally asked Mom one day, because I felt like all I ever did as a kid was clean pig pens. I swear, all I ever was doing was cleaning pig pens as a
Yeah.
kid. And I said to Mom one time, I says, "How many pigs did we have as a kid?" She said, "Oh, we had about 50 sows at any given time." I was like, "Okay, that explains why I was always cleaning pig pens."
Oh man, that's a lot of
And
damn pigs.
it is, and I've always kind of liked pigs. I know as a puncher you're not supposed to, but I did. And anyway, so we actually got those American guinea hogs. They're one of the oldest breeds in America, and they were
Mm.
actually nearly extinct. But they're actually a grazing hog, and I've actually thought about just not free ranging them. And part of it is because those subdividers kind of got tired of my rodeo cattle. So I thought maybe I'll put some pigs up there and we'll fight that fight with them for a little while
Yeah.
and stuff. But anyway, so that's kind of where we're at. And my wife, she milks goats and stuff, and raise chicken, and so we're probably not that I'm a sod buster, but I'm a little more, like I say right now. I'm just with the way life is going, and I really am an optimist, but I'm also a realist. With the way the economy's going and the
Oof.
$5 diesel fuel, day working is not a very paying proposition right now.
No,
It's just
no.
it's and
You better have something else, and yeah, and like I like where your head's at. Like you better be able to do something on your own.
yeah, and so we're just kind of at this point where we can just some essentials of life, kind of get down to the essentials, and like with my ranch radio company, you just kind of put it on hold. But like I said, a lot of these cowboys were like, yeah, we can't afford to travel this summer, Bill. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I can't either. I mean,
Yeah.
my truck's paid for that pulls my stock trailer to haul my rodeo cattle. And if the key doesn't turn on at $5.09 diesel fuel, I'm okay with it.
Mm.
It doesn't have to. And so, it's just kind of where we're at, with life right now. And like I say, got two teams of horses. One was my dad's and stuff. And so I'm gonna get them drove and sold. But I got a new adventure though, because before I was sold my cows here about a month ago, all these Corianni crosses, anything that was calving, because I knew they'd probably weigh them up. I'm pulling all the bum calves off. I'm pulling calves off left and right. So I ended up with 5 bums off of these cows that started calving. And I was driving down the road one day, and it's dangerous when I drive down the road because I have a time to think. And I'm
Yeah.
driving down the road, and I'm quite certain this was one of those, absolute God moments, like when Moses met God at the burning bush. I believe God told me, he says, Bill, you take 2 of them Corianni calves and raise them up and get a team of oxen. So I'm like this thing.
Hell yeah.
But it's just, there again, it's just the culture, the lifestyle. We've been working not as diligently towards this as my wife would like me to, because I get distracted by cows and horses and big country. But we've been really working towards this, and I've really been trying to set my life up more and more where I can do a lot of my stuff with my teams of horses, just because it incorporates them into it. It makes them useful. Actually, the funeral home the other day, they hired me to haul a casket to the grave for a family and stuff. So that's kind of where we're at in life. And just kind of, I'll be honest, just kind of hunkering in right now, and trying to weather this economic storm. But it's not just for us though. That's the other thing we try to look at is, okay, we want to get in a place that we're stable, we're secure. But one of our, we make it our goal to live peaceably amongst our neighbors, working with our hands, and not needing from other people. We want to be self-sufficient, not necessarily as
Mm-hmm.
self-reliant. But on the flip side of that, I want to be outward focused. The world around us needs people that are willing to help them. I got a neighbor that's 80 years old, and I'm almost 80. And I mean, the guy, he reminds me a lot of my dad, and he actually grew up in that multi-country some himself. But I look at him, he's always wondering how I'm doing. How's things going, Bill? How
Mm.
can I help you, kind of a mentality. And that's kind of where we're at in life. Not that we haven't been that way, but with what we're seeing, and just everything going on, I just think I've got to love my neighbor like I love myself. And my neighbor resounds to the person standing next to me at the grocery store, or this fine fellow on a podcast with me, or anyone around us. And I think right now that's the thing that I guess I really see that especially the agriculture community needs, is they just really need each other here to just kind of spur one another on, and being an encouragement. I was sitting with a friend yesterday afternoon, and he mostly farms, and man, he's starting to talk about his chemical went from $15 a gallon to $50 a gallon. His fertilizer went from $300 a ton to $1,000 a ton. And I'm
Mm.
feeling for him. I'm sitting here like, I'm not a sod buster, but I darn sure like a loaf of bread. And
Yeah.
and so I
Yeah. No
guess,
kidding, right?
that's kind of where, I mean, where we're at in our life right now. And, yeah, sure, I got friends that I'll still go day work for, and help, help more help them than even worry about daylight working. And, I still ride at the sale barns on Tuesday. I'll be over there tomorrow and stuff and help out there and stuff. But, as far as I'm not, the big country cowboying part of my life, is it over? No, but is it probably the thing that I'm driving for right now in life? No, that's also kind of where I'm at, is just, how do I now come home and help to raise, the next generation, if you will. I was thinking the only thing that, and I know there's a lot of other things out there cowboying that I haven't done, but probably the last thing that I desire to do cowboying, and I wanted to do it for my 50th birthday, but I'm not quite sure if I'll get it done this year or not, I wanted to go out on the wagon. I've never been out on the,
Me neither.
I've drove wagons and I've been around wagons, but I also maybe come to the realization I might be the wagon more than going out on the wagon at my age. I might be down to being camp cookie here,
Well, that one thing about being camp cookie is nobody's supposed to piss you off, so.
Right. So.
Yeah, no, I've never, like, I've done the trail ride. Like, we've drove cattle for a couple miles, and just for show and whatnot. But I've been on like the week-long ride type deal. But like, I've never been on a wagon, like Brandon calves. And like I said, growing up where I didn't know that was a thing anymore. And by the time I realized it was, I had student loans, and I couldn't make I couldn't make my student loan payments going to cowboy out on the wagon. And so like that just wasn't an option. And now I'm married with kids, so I'm working my ass off doing, and I'm not saying this towards you, like once we get done talking, I've got another couple hours worth of work to do, and that's the part that I work at, like behind a computer, so I can make enough money doing this so that I can go cowboy for fun, so that I can show my kids how much fun cowboying is. But also, I don't know what lesson I'm going to teach them, because like also cowboying doesn't pay worth a shit. but it's a hell of a lot of fun.
You're absolutely right, because you talk about getting done here. I go to bed at night. I usually get up by 5, every morning, and I go to bed. And my wife's out there plinking away on a computer, editing their videos, and and she's absolutely wonderful. I always said that I get my horses ready to sell, and she sells them by the videos she's put together for them and stuff. And so, but that's the whole thing is we all seem to have a sideline gig or 2 or 3 or 4, just to get it. But on the other hand, I think that's why I see Cowboys to be so honorable, is we're the kind of people, we're going to do what it takes as a general rule to take care of ourselves, take care of the livestock, and take care of our families and our friends. That's the whole thing too, is, man, I'll tell you what, hardly a one of us carry a lick of insurance on our life. We're just,
yet, unless you work for a big outfit, you don't carry insurance. But I guarantee you, there was times when I was without insurance, I knew who I could call, because they had insurance and they might had a little extra cash on hand in case I broke a leg.
Yeah, and if it happens, man, it's fundraisers and auctions and spaghetti feeds, and and that's there again. That's, I think, what I think, and I know that's what I like about the agriculture life. Sometimes I wish we made it more than we did. Absolutely, and it resounds beyond that. Here I sit in Lewistown, Montana, and one of my best friends is Dan Hartman, who's clear down and nearly to the Wyoming border, and yet, if I'm stuck, and actually he did, that's where my cows were last year as far as my rodeo cattle, is because I was in a deal, and the drought, we had to find grass for him. And, Dan, I just messaged him. I said, Dan, if you happen to know where there's some grass, let me know. This is what I'm in. And he's kind of like, well, I'll help you out, Bill. I'm there for you. And so I took him, mama cows, and he was willing to help me out again this year and go down there. It was just between the hay and the diesel fuel. I was just like, this ain't going to work,
Yeah.
And yet, and that's the whole thing is, just even a conversation like this is, someday you and I'll run into each other somewhere, and we'll feel like we're old friends just
Yeah.
because we have that camaraderie about us.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is,
Absolutely.
I think the other thing is, and there again, I'll never look down on somebody that wants to be a cowboy and might only be a weekend cowboy
Mm.
because their circumstances, we don't know them. That
Yeah,
might
yeah,
be the
yeah.
only way they can pay their bills. And yet, but when we can pick out the real deals, that's the whole thing is it
Mm.
doesn't take long. And I say weekend cowboys, and I say that nicely. I don't want to sound like I'm talking down at them because, like I say, I've taken the 9 to 5 job because I needed to pay the bills.
Yeah.
But the reality is we start figuring out who the real deals are, and you start figuring out who, like we've talked, is who we can rely on and who's there for us and stuff. And yet,
Yeah. Well,
on the other hand, I
who's
don't
got some
think we,
try?
yeah. And yet, on the other hand, I don't think we turn a blind eye to anybody that's in need. You might have ticked me off at one point in time, or not you as a
Yeah.
general statement. I'm not just going to leave you, old boy. You're
No.
still there for each other, and that's the whole thing that I see is in this cowboy culture, this cowboy community, is that there's still that sense of like we said, that community.
Mm.
That no matter, like I said, we're all on this same journey together. We're just doing it differently a lot of times.
Well,
And yet at the end of the day,
yeah. Oh, go ahead. Go finish your
no,
statement.
just at the end of the day, I think we all have the same goal. We just trying to make it through this life and enjoy it and make a living while we're doing it.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I tried to sum it up the other day. So like I got a new guy that hired on. And he's a little bit older than me. He's been around and he's more like the big circle type. And I'm more just feedlot. That's kind of what I've done. But he asked me uh, if I wouldn't mind feeding his horse, and I told him, hey, it's a general rule around here. And this is I know him coming from big outfits. I said, even if you're an asshole, that doesn't mean your horse is, and your horse don't deserve getting neglected because you're an asshole. So I don't care unless you're a real asshole. I'm always gonna feed your horses when you're when you're out of town. Like when you're not here, your horses are taken care of, and I expect the same from mine. Whatever differences we may have, we got to make a living on a horse. And if I don't want you to make a living, you're not going to make a living here because I'm cow boss. But as long as you're making a living here, your horse is going to be ready to, he's not going to be unfit because of me. Like that. That's how it is. Like I whatever differences we have, like man to man, we can settle those later. But like we don't neglect the horses because that's how we make our living. And so like I don't know. That's just one of those things. Like I don't care what we have going on. That's what makes you a cowboy. Are you gonna take care of the horse or not?
No, absolutely. I think a good man is good to animal. And
Yeah.
that's you're absolutely right. Yeah, don't drag one another's differences into the livestock, if you will. And
Yeah.
stuff. It just absolutely. And there again, as I think too, is my experiences, differences amongst cowboys. Usually, it'll get taken care of, and once it's done, it's done. It ain't
Yeah.
like a constant henpecking thing, But
Yeah.
I think you just hit the nail on the head, though. Is we're going to take care of it. That's that, and I've got a lot of strong beliefs in me, and for many reasons. But the thing I see that lacks in our society is people just confronting issues and not being
Bro, yes,
jackasses
sir.
about it.
Yes, sir.
Just if I'm the kind of guy. If you have a fight with me, come to me.
Yeah.
We'll settle it. And I'm not even talking physically anymore. I mean,
But let's
but
squash it. Let's squash it
yeah,
now.
let's talk about it because most of the time it's just a misunderstanding. Is a
Right.
lot of it. It ain't even a true misunderstanding, but so many people will just coyote around about it, and me telling you to you tell somebody else to tell somebody else to tell somebody else, it's just throwing gas on the fire. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think, like you said, is I think you hit just such a great point there, is that, if we have a problem between us, we're going to settle it. Let's just get I've ever heard. Holding an offense with somebody is like letting them live rent free in your brain. And most of the time, they don't even know you're mad at them.
Yeah.
You're thinking about it more than they ever do. And so, I think you just hit a great point there. Is just let's just start taking care of some of this junk that's out there and live
Mm-hmm.
a reputable life. Let's live
Well,
honorable amongst each other.
well, and a lot of it like can be settled just like that. Just like, hey, that's
Mm-hmm.
not what I meant. More than anything, like more than anything nowadays, is you could just be like, hey, that's not what I meant. Here's what I meant to say. It was a joke, and if it went too far, I'm sorry. Like that. That's all it takes. Like that. That's all it takes. And instead of just like pushing the issue till it comes to blows, like if you want to come to blows, I'm fine with that. I'll do it. I don't like getting hit in the face, but I mean, if that's what it's got to be, like we'll do it. But I'd rather just be like, hey, what the hell's the problem? Let's figure it out. Because I don't like hitting my friends.
No, I think you're right. I just there's so many things in our society, and I really don't want to go. I'd rather talk about cowboy stuff than
Yeah,
society. But
no,
the
I
thing
hear, I
that,
hear
but
you.
I guess, but what I'm saying here is we've emasculated. Their society has tried to emasculate the man so much that we
Mm-hmm.
don't confront things like that. That we're not man enough to just say, you know what, I have an issue with somebody, and I'm going to talk to them about it.
It got.
Instead of
This might be controversial a little bit, but it took like society got to a point where it took a little Canadian dude that sounds like Kermit the Frog to say it's okay to be a man. Like, who the fuck told us it wasn't okay to be a man? Like, just be a man. you know? Like, why did we need Jordan Peterson to tell us it was okay to be a man? Fuck off with all of that. Like, it's okay to be a man. Like, just be a man.
I absolutely agree. I mean, it just, yeah, we just, just be of good courage and, like you say, be a man. I mean, yeah. Anyway, because I'm a very aggressive person. I mean, I really am. I'm kind of like, I don't even know how to explain it. And it's I don't know if detrimental is the right word, but it can be detrimental if not harnessed. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah. Well,
And yet when you're like that kind of person, a lot of people, even people you think are embracing manhood, they don't know how to handle it. And I'm like, man alive, let's look at, I mean, just I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, I don't want to get political, but I do. I'm a realist.
hey,
We're
wait.
sitting
Well,
here not.
we're just
We're
talking, so let's talk.
right,
So,
but I guess what I'm saying is we're sitting here knocking on the door of a potential invasion of the United States in a war, and I'm looking around and I'm like, who's going to fight this war? Who's going to, who? Because my oldest boy just got out of the military, and I'm in there again. I won't go down too far a road, but he was telling me what was going on in the military, and I'm
oh
thinking,
yeah,
when I was in there, compared to when he was in there. And I mean, my boy's a man's man. Don't get me wrong, because if he wasn't, I'd kick him right where the manhood was and tell him to be a man. But and I'm sitting here thinking, the women of America need us men to be men.
yeah, I think so.
That's flat. Period. My daughters need me to be a man. My
Mm-hmm.
sons, they need me to be a man. And I mean, a man is a loving person too. I mean, I'm going to protect my family for
Mm-hmm.
all it's worth. I mean, I try to turn the other cheek as much as I can anymore, but I do tell people I only got two cheeks, and if you start slapping the other two cheeks, we're fighting.
Yeah,
Period.
yeah,
We're
that
gonna.
that, that
But
that's a no go zone.
yeah, and so you're sitting here thinking, and I'm thinking, my most loving thing I can do for my family is be a man.
Yeah.
protect them. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and so yeah, you're right. Why did we have to have Kermit the Frog? You know, tell me I can be a man. I'm not that I needed him to, because I was
Yeah,
probably
right.
being a man
But
anyhow. You know, but
yeah, well, that's because we cowboy for a living. That's what we like.
right,
We're
right,
we're we're men. We're men every day. But like,
right.
why did you need the blue collar, worker to have Jordan Peterson, who like I saw him like his last episode of Joe Rogan. He was wearing high water pants, and like I don't understand why. Uh, like me and you, like I wear a 36-inch inseam, but I buy a 40 so I can roll up the cuff because also like if that wears out, I can roll them down and tie a new hem or have my wife sew a new hem, and then I can keep wearing those pants. But like I don't wear high water pants. And especially not on purpose. Like if I'm going to Joe Rogan, I'm gonna look like the most slicked out buckaroo like you've ever seen, and I'm gonna have like the stiffest mustache wax you'll see because I want to look as cowboy as I possibly fucking can if I'm gonna be on that big of a podcast. If I'm gonna be the guy that's telling you to act like a man, I'm not gonna wear high waters to the Joe Rogan podcast, but
Uh,
anyhow, Jordan Peterson makes a lot of great points. But like, when did it take a guy that wears high water pants to tell us it's okay to be a man? Like, Jesus Christ, man! just be a man.
yeah, you're absolutely right. But that's, I mean, this is just I don't know, this downward spiral of not having a moral absolute in our nation anymore. Anything goes kind of a scenario. That I don't. Well, I know how many genders are out there. There's two. We was created male and
Yeah.
female. Period. I know how many are out
Yes.
there, but how many false perceived ones are out there? And so it's when we start becoming a pick and choose society. You can pick this. You can pick that. You can be whatever you want. Well, no wonder. I mean, no wonder people need somebody to cheer them on to be a man. But it also, I think, goes back to what we were talking about. I don't know, whatever the Z's, X's, Y's, whatever. The
Yeah.
reality is the reality is too is the younger generation needs an example of what manhood is.
Yes, sir.
And I've had people tell me, well, my kid can't learn to work because we live in town. I'm like, yeah, you can. There's a garbage to take
Mm,
out. There's dishes to do. Like I messaged you before, not that I'm great at doing dishes with my family, but my boy and my daughter and all of us need to do dishes together. Teach him
yeah.
to be that man. It's as manly to do dishes for my wife as it is to go choke a yearling.
Yeah.
And so it's this example that we have to set that it resounds beyond our culture. It resounds into everything that I tell people. If you live in an apartment, I bet you there's garbage in the hallways your kids can go pick up. There's garbage
Yep.
out in the playgrounds. And so I think that's the whole
There's
thing
an old
is that
lady down the block who could use their lawn mowed. And guess what?
absolutely,
Volunteered to do it, and she might pay you $50. You never know.
absolutely,
But if
and
she
so
doesn't,
so
just mow it anyways because she's an old lady, and like it's just a good thing to do.
no, you're absolutely right. That's the whole thing is, and so to get just the whole, I guess, put a cap on, if you will, this whole thing of you know, we don't need a permission to be a man. We just need to be men.
That's
And
right.
and
Right.
and it's not a confusion. I mean, and I'm going to say this, and like I say, I'm a preacher, but I'm going to say this: if you're confused what you are, pull your britches down. If there's something there, you're a man. Start acting like one.
Right.
Period.
Right. I think you're right. And like,
Yeah.
yeah, it just yeah, I that there that's I've made so many jokes over the past 6 months about how men are just showing women how good we are because we're taking over all their sports too. But it's just like how are people accepting this as reality? That's the part they don't. that I don't get. It's like that there is a man with a literal dick and balls. There is reports of this dude walking around with his dick out in the locker room of the University of Pennsylvania, and just won a women's gold medal in the NCAA. Like, he's not even trying to hide the fact that he's got a dick and balls. And I apologize. I know that you have the church and whatever.
You're not offending me. No, you're going down. Trust me. I mean, you're going down the same road as I would,
Yeah,
because I mean, you asked the question. I can tell you why. Because there's no moral absolute truth to most people's lives anymore.
yeah,
Part of
you're
it
right
is
on that.
we sit and let social media and Hollywood and I mean the newspaper, and I mean you can go through so many people that are influencing our thinking, and and the reality is a lot of people won't think for themselves, or if they see something, are they searching the truth of it out or the
Yeah,
facts of it out? Just I can sit here and tell you something, and you can take it at face value and be like, yeah, that's right. Or you have a choice to say, you know what? I want to know the truth about that. I want to
right.
know the facts of that out. And so many people, I just actually deleted my Facebook app for a while. I was just it just brings me such discontent and anxiety at
Oh,
times
yeah,
because I get
you're better off. You're better off.
there's so many there's things I like about it. I like, I got some friends that drive horses, and I like looking at some of the cowboy
Yeah,
stuff, but
I
there's so
understand.
much of it. And yet I'm sitting here thinking this is shaping my thinking pattern. And the reality is with the algorithms and stuff, they know how to manipulate us by what we've
Hmm.
looked at in the past. And so, we're sitting here, this whole society, and so they're programming so many people. And
Yep.
so without people saying, I'm going to set a moral absolute truth in my life, and trust me, I've had points in my life that moral absolute truth was obscure. I'll just
Yeah.
say it that way. I knew what moral truth was, but it wasn't that I lived it out. And so it has to be communicated. Where are we getting our source of truth? Where are we getting our source of news? Where are we getting and news is a dangerous word to
Oh,
use, but
fuck yeah.
and and just because I sit here and hear something on the news, am I going to actually search it out and see if it's actual news, or am I just going to say, well, that's it, I'm good with it? And so that's how I would say we've gotten to where we're at. and
Mm,
and I'll be honest, you just take a guy like him. I think there's so many wrong motives in his life that it just stinks. It just reeks of so many wrong motives. Is It's not just about a bad moral truth. There's so many wrong motives to so much of this stuff that's going on that who knows? It might be he just wanted that as his claim for fame. He might go straight now. I
yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
you know, I,
Who the hell knows? Yeah, it's wild. But anyways, it's a wild world we live in. But I look at people like Dan Hartman, like every 2 days, when Dan's back in cell phone territory because he'll post something on Facebook and it's usually pretty funny, and
yeah.
I look at a guy like that and he's like he's just as old school as they get, and but yet he's still living here in 2022. So I have no doubt in 2050 there's going to be somebody like Dan Hartman out there. And they're not going to be Dan Hartman. There's only one Dan Hartman. But there's going to be somebody like him, and maybe it's going to be in Montana, maybe it's going to be in Arizona, maybe it's in Illinois. I don't know. Who knows where the world's headed anymore? Like there's a lot of people moving around the country nowadays, and yeah, like you never know where the Cowboys going to go, but I can tell you that the Cowboys going to move because they've always moved. and you're gonna find somebody like a Dan Hartman 50 years from now, because at the end of the day, there's still gonna be cows that need taken care of, and that's what we do. At the end of the day, like we can bitch, we can complain, we can agree, and we can disagree. But the one thing we have in common is we throw a saddle on the horse in the morning, and we take care of cows.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. And I mean, I mean, like I said, I love Danny
Yeah,
because there's so many. I get so
he's a
many.
hoot. I love that
You
guy.
get so yeah, you just get so many giggles out of him because you don't know what he's going to post and when he's going to post it. And but on the other hand, Matt is whether it's Dan Hartman down there in southern Montana or you down there in Nevada or me here in central Montana, the reality is and I just want to encourage you and I and the people that are listening to this. I don't even know what the guy's name was that swam because I could care less his name. I care less as he's got an absolute problem is what it boils down to. But the reality is I think it just nails and boils down to is let us be an example. Let us be an example of what true manhood is and moral
Yeah,
character and excellence to the world around us. That is I don't know, CNN or NBC or any of them ever going to magnify us? Probably not.
no,
But our neighbors will see it, and our neighbors' kids will see it, and the other guy that you're cowboying with will see it. And I think that's where it boils down to is the media ain't going to sell newspapers by saying well, Bill Plouffe drove his team to go get a load of wood with his family. That ain't going to sell newspapers. But some whack job that decides to swim, in the opposite sex swimming competition, that sells newspapers. So it's just a driven thing like that. And so, yeah, I love Dan Hartman, and I think he's a great guy. And you're right, there's going to be the next Dan Hartman out there. But you and I and everybody that's listening to this podcast can also be that guy for our sphere of influence, that they can look at us and say, that's what a man looks like.
well, and I can also say this: like I've told a lot of jokes about current events, and people have downloaded those podcasts, pretty decently. Um, but the two most, or I'd say the two guests that have been downloaded the most have been Boots O'Neill and Dan Hartman, and like a long shot, like a lot more downloads than any other episode that I've ever had. Uh, so people still love Cowboys, and people like what Cowboys are about. Because like if you're talking Cowboys, I'll give you like four names. It's my dad, Wes McKinley, Scott Hall, Boots O'Neill, and Dan Hartman. Like those are sure enough cow hands. And those are my most popular episodes. So people still like that stuff.
Right on, right on.
Yeah. So anyway, Bill, this been a really good visit. I've sure enjoyed it. Thank you for sitting down with me. I do appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. No, I've enjoyed it. Like I said, a lot of anticipation, excitement, wonder what it was going to be and where it'd be. And, I mean, I could sit and tell story after story, but, it's old man, it's knocking on 9 o'clock, close to the old man's bedtime here, but no, that's all good. But, I just appreciate this, and I appreciate you inviting me on. And, I just hope maybe someday we can meet face to face and shake hands and sit down and tell some more cowboy stories with each other. So thanks,
Man,
Matt, for having me on.
man, I'd really enjoy that. And any other time you want to come on, you got something you want to say, let me know, and we'll figure something out.
You bet. Maybe I can get on one of them bull sessions. I listened to one of them, that one the other day, and I thought, man, that's pretty fun too. So, so
I
appreciate
like
it.
that. Those are my favorite. Other than just I like the one on ones. There's certain people that I'll say like I need to set. Well, and I'm glad you said let's do one on one, but the bull sessions are a lot of fun because you never know where they're gonna go. You have
Right
no
on.
idea. Yeah, like you're talking to cowhands, and um, it gets a little western. So, but I enjoy it and people like it. But either way, Bill, man, I sure do appreciate your time. It's been an honor, and you're welcome back anytime.
Well, thank you, sir.
Well, make sure before we go, let everybody know where they can find you, let your wife's YouTube, all that. Let's
Yeah, yeah,
see if we can
yeah.
help
It's
you out
Delcy.
any.
Oh, I appreciate it. It's Delcy at a Life of Heritage, and then I'm on Facebook, Bill Plouffe. And like I said, I kind of took a little break on the Facebook thing right now. I was just kind of getting a little irritable about some things and trying to get my focus a little better and stuff. But and just if I'm there for people, and like I'm not ashamed of the gospel. I'm not ashamed of Jesus, and I'll pray for anybody. I'm there to reach out to. Right now we're in hard times, and I'm going to talk a little bit as a pastor for a second here, Matt. But
Go
one of
ahead.
the things that have bothered me and really breaks my heart is when we get in these economic hard times is the suicide rate amongst agriculture goes up drastically.
Mm-hmm.
And like I say, I'm there for you. You reach out to me with a phone call, or I mean, excuse me, a message on Messenger, or just whatever way you can get a hold of me. I'm there for you, and I'm there to lean on, to pray for you, to encourage you. This morning, the Lord had given me a scripture for a good friend of mine, and I sent it to him, and I said, "Hey, the Lord told me to send this to you," and he's like, "Wow, that's awesome, thank you." And I say that because I know at times I need encouragement, and so I guess, like I say, I'm here for this community. I'm here for the cowboy world. And Matt, if you would let me, can I just pray over our community right now, and close the show? And if you don't want that, I'm okay with that too.
No, that's fine. I was gonna say on that note, I'm the same way. Like if you're feeling like there's no way out, there's always another way out. Like there's always somebody to talk to, and I don't want that call. But if you need if you need somebody to talk to, like you can get a hold of me. I promise you. Like you know where I'm at on social media, and like I said, it's not something I want to do. But like if you got nothing else, like you give me a call and I'll answer. Like that's there's always another way. And yeah, Bill, I'm fine with that. Like we haven't ever done this before, but hey, whatever. It's I appreciate your time and I respect that. So let's yeah, go for it, sir.
Well, Father, I thank you right now that even in the midst of this hard time in the economy and even in agriculture, that you're not shocked and you're not surprised, that you're the God that supplies all our need according to our riches and glory in Christ Jesus. And so, Father, right now, just for all the struggling, hurting agriculture community and even our nation as a whole, Father, that we know you haven't given up on us and that you sent your son Jesus to die for us and that you care about us. And so right now, I just thank you that you're working in each and every one of our lives. And right now, if there is anyone struggling, Father, I ask that you just embrace them, you wrap your arms around them, and you encourage them. And once again, if they need somebody, just help them to reach out to their friends and neighbors, to Matt or I. And so we thank you for that in Jesus' name. Amen.
Bill, I appreciate you.
No, I appreciate you, Matt. I'm going to listen to you more just because it's fun, and I thank you for making the world aware of what a cowboy really is. So thank you again for having me, and hopefully we can speak again.
No, anytime you want to come back, you let me know, and we'll do it again. I appreciate you, and everybody else. Thanks for tuning in, and move your ass. We're burning daylight.